Victoria, here we are just ahead of the Mental Health Minute, a national moment with people coming together, with many millions of people set to hear a really important message on this Mental Health Awareness Week.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so exciting. I mean, I think over 500 radio stations, 20 million people, every household, workplace, for those that are still around, those of us at home, used to being at home, kind of radio on in the background. It's amazing.
I mean, radio is such a powerful tool, isn't it, to get these sorts of messages across? Why do you think it'll really work for the Mental Health Minute this year?
So I think, radio has been, I think, probably everyone's constant companion through the pandemic, and I think people, whether you listen to news or music or classical or whatever it might be. I think it has been everyone's companion. I think it's been a way for people to to understand what's happening, to connect with other people. So I think that's exactly where we want to be with the Mental Health Minute, which is people understanding the power of being connected and talking to other people about how they feel. So it's the perfect medium, I think.
And in terms of that, the message will go out and many millions of people will hear it. But the hope is as well that it's not just about it goes in one ear and it goes through, it comes out the other. It's about people engage, and they do that through radio. They listen, and then they take action as a result.
Yes, absolutely. And I think what we really want people to do and to sort of hear, I suppose, tomorrow during the minute and subsequently, is really that there is help and support there for people who are struggling. It's been such a difficult time, over a year now, and whatever age you are, in whatever way the pandemic has affected you, it's the right thing to reach out and get help and support. And that's really the message that we want to get across. There's not there's no stigma or shame in reaching out for help. It's absolutely what you should do, no matter your age or stage, or whether you've been feeling this way for a little while, whether you've just started, just wondering whether what you're feeling's worrying. Reach out. There are people there.
Absolutely. Let's talk about when people hear the phrase mental health innovations, they might not necessarily know what that is, but when they hear text shout to 85258 and they hear me saying it all the time, they'll suddenly go, oh, right, that's that thing. They might go, oh, isn't that the Prince William thing or the Kate thing, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge? But it's a service which set up at a time, I think, where the mental health conversation really started to pick up. And I imagine the year that you've just had makes you think, well, thank goodness we were able to establish ourselves in those brief sort of few years, so that by the time lockdown came around, that Shout network was strong.
Yes, and we were very lucky, I suppose, to be in many ways, not that we knew we would need to be, but we were very sort of pandemic ready. So our service is digital. And all of our most of our team were remote anyway, so our clinical team, our volunteers, are all at home on laptops anyway, so that meant that we didn't really have an interruption in our service. And it also meant that, very luckily for us, we had a lot of volunteers who were the sort of front line of our service, if you like, who were at home much more than they would have normally been, and so they were able to give us more time over the pandemic. So the number of conversations we take every day has doubled. So we now take somewhere between sort of 13 and 1500 a day, and about 30% of those are people who are reaching out for help for the first time. And that's really important. And I think text has been good for people over the pandemic because people have been a bit more kind of crowded at home, and finding a space to talk about how you're feeling, where you feel that it's confidential and you won't be overheard, is obviously more difficult. And so text has been very good for people to reach out confidentially, silently, without being overheard. And it really sort of reduces the barriers. Sometimes when we are feeling distressed or worried, it's quite hard to get the words out. So being able to just write it in a text, send it off, and then feel that that's just a sort of quite a gentle way of beginning a conversation has resonated with people.
Some people might hear that, you know, the conversations that you're having have doubled in lockdown, and they may well be horrified by that. But I think there's part of me which thinks, thank goodness they knew you were there. If more people are reaching out, that's more people who knew that there was a service available to them. Do you view that as a positive?
Yes, absolutely. And I think also what we really want is for people to reach out for help and to us or whether that's to someone in their family, whoever it is, reach out for help early. And that's what we found, that we have had people reaching out to us, who've heard about the service, but reaching out early. So before they reach a point of crisis, or before they reach a point where other things have started to unravel, if you like. So again, that can be someone of any age, but that first step is the really important step. So we always try with our texters to work with them to identify someone else that they can talk to around them, whether that's a family member or a teacher or a work colleague or a GP, whoever it might be. Find that person who you can have the confidence to really explore how you're feeling and get that help and support. And we really want people to get that help and support as early as possible.
When people hear the mental health minute and they hear that number and they hear that it's a tech service, what response do you hope that they have?
So I suppose, anyone who's listening to the Mental Health Minute who is worried about how they're feeling, I hope they'll reach out. Anyone who's listening to the Mental Health Minute who's a bit worried about someone else, just seeing signs that actually someone's, not as not as sort of relaxed or happy as they used to be, someone who's clearly feeling a little bit worried or distressed, that they'll encourage them to reach out for help and support, and that they'll just make, that we just need to make it a kind of as normal as going to the GP because you're not feeling well, because you've got a bit of a sore throat or whatever it might be. We need to think of our mental health in exactly the same way that we think about our physical health, which is not feeling quite right. So I'm gonna ask for some help.
I wonder whether or not sometimes people think, oh, because they associate physical health with the NHS and hospitals and buildings and things like that. I think sometimes when people think about mental health, they think about charitable organizations and different types of organizations. And I think sometimes they think, oh, well, I don't want to bother a charity or a foundation or anything like that. That's I don't want to put my problems onto them. But actually, you guys at Shout a huge, 2,300 volunteers.
Yeah.
That you've got, which is a huge number of people who are trained, who are ready, and I guess volunteer because they want to have these conversations.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So we have an extraordinary number of amazing people who want to have those conversations. So we're absolutely not saying please don't talk to us unless it's very serious. Please don't, we're very busy. Please don't come to us. We're really saying, we're here, and actually we really want to talk to you. We really want you to feel that we're there for you. And I suppose the nice thing about our conversations, I mean, we talk about them, about the number, and there are obviously loads of them, but they're all one-to-one conversations. So that is, you and one other person talking about how you feel. And as you said, we have 2,500 of them who want to have those one-to-one conversations and just listen, and help you kind of explore how you're feeling. We're not too busy, nothing's too small. One of the things that has been really noticeable for us across all the time that we've been available to people, but particularly during the pandemic, is that people often feel that they're not worthy of support, or their issue isn't important enough, or there's other people that are more important, and that's absolutely not the case. We want to talk to anyone who is in that moment and isn't feeling great, and it might be that moment passes, and that's fantastic. We're really not going to sit there afterwards and think, oh, that was a waste of time. Every single conversation is important to us, and we have time for them.
Have those conversations changed during lockdown? You talk on the website about the sorts of issues that people will text you about? Has that changed at all? Have the nature of the conversations changed at all as a result of what we've experienced in the last year?
So I think the conversations, I mean, we've seen a lot more anxiety, we've seen a lot more kind of worry, and that's entirely normal. It's been a really worrying time. I suppose the interesting thing about what we have seen over the pandemic is how much news and events affect people. So at the moment, it's great that we're seeing a really clear roadmap. People understand, what the next steps are. I think where that's been less clear for people, where we've had sort of sudden announcements or sudden changes, we've seen really high numbers of texters and people very distressed, because if you're you're in an anxious time anyway, and then something changes and there's something on the news, or that you see something on your social media that isn't what you expected, that's been really difficult for people. So school closures have been really difficult for young people. Not all young people, some young people have been really happy at home. So it hasn't by any means been a sort of universal experience. Some people have found some elements of the pandemic actually all right, and others have found other elements more difficult. And of course, we've had so much change over the last year, and we've seen, I suppose, a bit more around, issues around relationships, because we've all been squeezed in a bit tight together in our kind of home relationships. But other people have been, really experiencing really acute loneliness, and sense of isolation and disruption. So all of those things are really valid. Whatever your experience of the pandemic has been is your experience, and if it's caused you some difficulties or some problems, then we'd love to talk to you about it.
I think you hinted at it before, but the texting nature of the service, do you think that sort of worked for you in terms of the pandemic, when people were in houses where there may have been several family members, certainly within the house, maybe within the same room, that actually the texting was something that allowed them to have that conversation without the fear of stigma or stigmatization?
Yes, absolutely. And very practically, without the fear of sort of being overheard, I suppose. But also, we're available 24/7. And what we find is that, people can often find ways of distracting and managing how they're feeling during the day. But as it gets later at night, that's more difficult. And of course, that's when it's more difficult often to reach out. So having a text-based service which is available for people, whatever time of day or night, means that you can have that conversation, in a very sort of safe and warm conversation, in the middle of the night, if that's when it's the right time for you, and that's when you need the help and support. And we all know those early hours of the morning can be pretty tough.
Can I ask you about the service sort of moving forward now? Because we're about to enter this period of time now. For a lot of people, life will return to normal on the 17th of May, nightclubs aside. 21st of June potentially being this other date where suddenly everything is, quote, back to normal. And I'm very minded in the conversations that I'm having when it comes to people's mental health is that, one, normal wasn't working out fantastically for a lot of people anyway,
Yeah.
but also that potentially issues which have emerged during this time may take some months or even years to emerge. So I'm guessing you're not saying to all your volunteers, right from the 21st of June, you're all on, leave and you can have some time off. You must be prepared for a period of time where this sort of hangover from lockdown or the pandemic or the return to normal life will come with some sort of impact, which I guess you've got to try and create, some sort of bar chart or flow diagram to try and just work out what resources you might need during that time.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. I mean, we do expect and we hope, also if we get some nice weather actually has a big impact on people's mental health. And I know that the theme of Mental Health Awareness Week this week has also been about nature. And, we always really encourage people, take a walk, listen to music, just be kind of out there. And so good weather is good, and we know that has an impact. I think we're always very aware of those kind of moments and events, and times that might be very difficult for people. So young people returning to school, and then young people having that, that kind of long period of time in the summer holidays where it might be more difficult. The return to school in September might be more difficult. We've got sort of exams but not exams. I think there's still all the kind of anxiety for young people around results. I think for other people there are anxieties definitely around the economy, and how is the economy going to recover, and how might that impact on them. There will be people that have lost their jobs, as we know. There is a phenomenally extraordinary group of frontline workers who have kept us going for a long time, and particularly those in health and social care. That job doesn't go away. The pressures of the pandemic will be replaced by the pressures of what had to stop during the pandemic. And so that group of people, we have you can text Frontline to 85258, and again we're very, very keen to continue to be there for people that have really kind of gone that extra, not even mile, 100 miles over the last period of time. So we do expect that to be quite a long tail. We also expect that that for some people the sense of, I guess, the collective sense of purpose has actually been really great for some people, and they might find it difficult to go back into a kind of, as you say, whether it's completely normal or as it was before, but an environment where we see other issues, other worries kind of coming back into our sort of consciousness, where we've been able to sort of park them for some time. So yes, we don't expect the numbers, the demand for our service to decline. It remains to be seen beyond those kind of moments whether it continues to increase at the rate that it has.
And it's great to know that the service is available if people need it, either now, if they need it in 2 months' time, or if they need it in 6 months' time. That texting shout to 85258 gets that response, and people are trained to respond in the appropriate way. Can we talk about some celebrity names? Just sure. Because people could listen to Mick and Victoria speaking all day, but sometimes when people of certain influence and profile lend themselves to promoting campaigns like this, it has a huge impact, just because their voice is so widely heard. So when you've got royalty, including David Beckham in that, because he's basically royalty now, isn't he? You've got footballers, actors, people who are so well known, who are speaking openly about their experiences and openly encouraging people to come forward as well. That must make a huge difference in terms of people then thinking, oh, well, if David Beckham says it, or if the royal family says it, maybe that is something that might be suitable for me.
Yeah, and we've seen that, so obviously the Heads Together campaign, which ran in 2016-17 and was the sort of the genesis for mental health innovations and Shout, was very much about sort of amplifying that message, and these things always have, I think, the sort of well-known people talking about it always has a fantastic effect in terms of people feeling comfortable to reach out. And I'm so pleased to see that there are amazing people from across the generations. A lot of young people use our service, but we're really keen for older people to feel that we are not a service just for young people. We've got volunteers who are 18 to 80. And we've got, we're there for absolutely everyone. So I'm very excited to see, the legends that are Joanna Lumley and Dame Shirley Bassey, also talking about it. Because for that, there's been a lot of conversation about mental health in younger generations, and we still have a long way to go. But it's a more common conversation. And we've talked a lot, I think, quite rightly, about the impact of the pandemic on a younger generation who've kind of had to put their life on hold, and have been amazing in doing that. But also it's had a phenomenal impact on older people. And the shielding, the isolation, the being separated from your families, all those sorts of things, I think are have been so difficult for people, and often people feel that that's not a reason to reach out for help and support, but it really is.
Absolutely, and it's you probably had similar conversations yourself when I speak to young people about mental health, or I get asked to sort of give talks on the subject. They'll be really sort of, yeah, fine, yeah, absolutely, I completely agree with you. And sometimes if it's in a school, it'll be the teachers who at the end will come to me and go, "Oh, the thing you said about X, Y, or Z," and I'll realize that actually the stigma didn't lay with the young people, be it high school or university students. It was people from older generations who had never really considered mental health in the way that the conversation would frame it. And I think that's kind of where we've got to think, when we try and put out messages, that we have to bear in mind, don't we, that it's got to be for everybody, or everybody will
Absolutely.
have a different response, because everybody's been brought up in a certain way, thinking a certain way about mental health and what the implications of talking about mental health might be. It's brilliant that the younger generation is feeling much more positive about it, but that doesn't mean we abandon the older generations as being, well, past it and you can't teach an old dog new tricks, because I think they're open to that conversation. It just needs that moment to think, maybe I'll start that conversation today.
Yeah, and also definitely thinking about, um, that it isn't, that whole sort of stiff upper lip thing, which we is really ingrained in so many of us. I mean, that's it's important. We have kind of endured a lot through the last period, and we have had an extraordinary kind of fortitude in being able to do that. Um, Reaching out for a bit of help and support doesn't mean that you failed to to kind of cope. It just means that that you just right now you need a little bit of help, and that's absolutely normal, and that's what will enable people to continue. So getting a little bit of a boost, talking to someone about it, feeling that you've been heard and listened to, is the way of carrying on. I think that the more we internalize these things, the more we don't talk about them because we don't want to burden someone, or we want to just kind of carry on being strong. Probably shortens the period of time that we can be strong for. Yeah,
Absolutely,
so we're
absolutely.
very keen that anyone of any age reaches out to us, or any other organization, or family member, whoever it is. Just have that conversation.
I've got to ask you this question because it will annoy me if I don't ask. You know, when you get text speak and people text in a different way to the way in which they write, do you have
Yeah.
to train your volunteers to understand certain phrases or emojis to know what they would be? Because I imagine that sometimes if someone's trying to express themselves, they may use all kinds of different language or emojis, or the text symbols that we've come to find so normal. But if you misread them, I guess that might be potentially problematic. So do you have a little log of sort of things that people need to be aware of?
Yeah, so there's a lot of text speak sort of training, but also so alongside when you volunteer on our platform, there's a little kind of chat function, so the volunteers and our clinical team can chat to each other in a sort of open forum, and that is full of what does LMAO mean, what does all those sorts of things, and it does kind of floor you. It's one of the great things actually about, I mean, the other thing from a volunteering perspective about text is that someone sends you a text and you do have time to kind of to look at it and go, oh my gosh, I don't even really know what that means, and because you're on a laptop, you can quickly Google it, or you can ask one of the other volunteers. You can get that sort of help and support. So yeah, it's one of the benefits for us and for our volunteers in being on text, is you've got a bit more time to respond. But yeah, I always dread the IDK.
Oh, hang on. I don't know.
I don't know. So you kind of go, tell me, when we always sort of say to people, tell me, tell me a little bit more about how you're feeling. Tell me a little bit more about, what might have worked in the past, when you felt this way, and you just get the IDK. That's sometimes a bit of a, okay, we're going to have to really kind of, dig into this one. And it is interesting. We try, with our, from our perspective, to not kind of disappear into text speak, because that that can sort of shorten the conversation. So we always send people a longer reply, but it is important. Yeah, you've got to know, and the the emojis can be pretty challenging too.
There's still a few that I don't know. There's one which is two hands that I think look like they're praying, but I think it's supposed to be a high five. And that can be a very different thing of if someone goes like that, are they going, say a prayer for, or are they going, hey, isn't it great? Let's all high five. And it reminds me of when LOL started when people would say, people thought LOL meant lots of love. So then you'd get a text from your auntie saying, your Uncle Albert has died, lol, thinking that they were saying lots of, and you'd go, hang on a minute. But I think it's an issue which I guess is an issue very specific to the medium in which you work, which is why I wanted to ask you about it. So thank you for responding in the way that you have. Just in terms of that, and as well, I think you've hinted at it throughout the conversation, in terms of if people do text the service, what's that immediate response? Because some people might go, well, are they going to not want to know who I am, where I am, my full name, my address, and those sorts of things? Or does the conversation start straight away? Can you give us a sense of that?
Totally straight away. So if you text 85258, text shout to 85258, you will get a few automated messages that just explain the service and also let you know that you're through, as it were. And then you're connected directly to one of our volunteers. We might ask you your first name, because that can help through the conversation. And we do sometimes ask texters their age, particularly if they're young. If we think they might be young, but that's all we would ever ask you. And you don't have to fill in a form. You don't give us any personal information around your address or anything like that. And it will be an absolutely sort of confidential, anonymous conversation. So you don't have to tell us your name. You don't have to tell us anything. We do, we will have that conversation with you, with anyone who texts in, and it's completely free. It won't show up on your bill. So if you're not paying your phone bill, don't worry. The person paying the bill won't say, what is this 85258 here? It won't show up on your bill. And we won't contact you again. We don't ever contact people outside of them contacting us. So it's very much the texter is in control of the conversation. They can tell us as much or as little as they want to let us know. And if they stop the conversation, so if you feel that the conversation is not working for you, text stop. That ends our conversation with you, and we don't kind of try and contact you back and say, hi, you texted us a bit earlier, would you like to carry on the conversation? Very much that the texter is in control of the conversation.
Obviously, your volunteers are sort of trained to make sure that conversation is sort of active and proactive in terms of where the conversation turns, to make sure that those things get explored. At the end of a conversation, do you often, or do you ever signpost to different services or point people in another direction?
Yes, absolutely. And that's usually part of, there are sort of 5 stages to the conversation. So the first is where we sort of build rapport. So, you want to kind of build as much as you can, a bit of a sort of relationship. So we always introduce ourselves. I always say, thanks very much for texting in. My name is Victoria. We kind of build that relationship. And then we do the exploring phase. And then we always try and move people on, if we can, to a sort of plan for what they're going to do next. And as I said earlier, we always want that to be that they can identify someone that they're happy to talk to. That's not always possible. Everyone doesn't, necessarily feel that way. And sometimes what people want is a bit more specialist advice and support. So they might be looking for a specific piece of help or information in order to help them take that next step. So we have a whole range of more specialized organizations that we and helplines that we signpost people onto, and also digital tools and resources that we also sign people onto. And we also, we provide our service as a sort of crisis messenger for about 40 other charities. So sometimes we'll have very much a sort of back and forth between, someone's come to us, has texted us because they've come across our number through a different organization. And maybe that organization, maybe it's at night time when that organization isn't open. And so we'll have a plan for how they can contact that organization in the morning. But what are you going to do now that's going to help you to stay calm, to feel more relaxed, so that you can carry on with, usually often get some sleep, and then carry on with that plan in the morning. So we do signpost really widely to other organizations, and it's very much a kind of, there is a sort of ecosystem around mental health and other issues as well. You know, some people need help with housing or finance, so we can signpost people onto a whole range of organisations.
Brilliant stuff. Victoria, thank you so much for your time today. Good luck with both the minute itself. Our radios will be tuned in and everything, I'm certain, will go according to plan. And fingers crossed as well that people continue to hear those positive messages. To text shout to 85258 as well. I'll continue saying it. I say it at the end of all my programs. It's included in the spiel that I have, because I think that signposting is absolutely crucial, and it's something I'll continue to do. Thank you for joining us today, and best of luck with Shout and wherever you turn to next.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your support. It means a great deal.